Hello, my name's Richard from Arcible. So if you've seen our blog post from earlier this week, or you've watched one of our previous videos about messaging policies, you might know that now in Microsoft Teams, we can centrally administer and create a policy that can control the default presenter permission in Microsoft Teams online meetings. Now this is one of many permission settings that we can set in Microsoft Teams. However, as sometimes happens with services and products that are based in the cloud, it takes a little bit of time for the user interface to catch up with some of these new options that are available. So if you're looking for the new policy setting to configure and administer the default meeting permissions for the presenter role, then that's only available in PowerShell right now. It hopefully will come to the user interface later. So what we're going to look at today is just a quick introduction to getting access to Microsoft Teams via PowerShell so that you can create, edit, and assign some policies to users. Now in this video, we're not going to cover every different policy type and every different option that's available, but what we will do is we'll point you in the right direction to the documentation that's available for this, and then hopefully with what you see in the video today, you'll know enough to get started. If you do have any questions, then please feel free to put that in the comments down below. Alternatively, you can reach out to us on Facebook or Twitter and message us with any questions that you might have. Okay, so let's head on over to the PC and we'll take a look at getting access to Teams via PowerShell. So before we can start looking at PowerShell and getting you managing Microsoft Teams via PowerShell, there's a couple of things that you're going to need set up on your PC first. So if we flick over to a browser, we can show you this. We'll put a link to this page in the description below so that you've got it for yourselves. But basically there's two things that we need. The majority of the PowerShell commands that we're going to be looking at in this video are inside the Skype for Business PowerShell module, and you can access that by clicking the link on the page here, and that will take you to a download page where you can download the Skype for Business online PowerShell module. That's an MSI file that you can install on your PC, and then the PowerShell module is installed that way. Some of the PowerShell commands for Microsoft Teams require a separate Microsoft Teams PowerShell module. And the way that that's obtained is slightly differently. So if we go to this page to show you that, instead of installing an MSI file, we can get that directly from PowerShell using the install module command. And what we can do is we can simply copy this from this page and we can paste that into a PowerShell window that we've already opened. On this machine, we've already actually got both modules installed. So we open up our Microsoft PowerShell window and we'll paste in the install module command that we copied just a second ago. What that's going to do is that's going to attempt to download the PowerShell module from the internet automatically. And what you may get is a warning similar to that we've got on the screen right now, which is that it's trying to download a PowerShell module from a repository that's not currently marked as trusted. We can just hit the Y key to say, yes, we acknowledge that and we want to continue with the download. Okay, so with the PowerShell module installed, it's now time for us to get connected to Skype for Business and to Microsoft Teams. So now that we've got the PowerShell modules that we need installed, there's one thing that we want to check before we start connecting to Microsoft Teams, and that's what your current PowerShell execution policy is set to. This needs to be set to remote signed or lower. If it's set to restricted, then you're not going to be able to bring in and import the PowerShell modules that we need. So the way that you can check this is just by using the PowerShell command get-execution policy. And we can see that our current execution policy is set to remote signed, which is perfect. Okay, so the first step that we need to do is we need to create a session for the Microsoft Teams PowerShell module. And the way that we do that is we use the new CS Online session PowerShell command, and we put that into a variable. So I'm going to create a variable called $session, and then we're going to use the new CS Online session PowerShell command. Now, this is entirely optional, but especially if you're in a hybrid environment, it can sometimes cause issues. So what we can do is we can use the parameter override admin domain on the end of this, and here you would specify your Office 365 tenant name. So I'll enter my Office 365 tenant name here, and then we hit enter. So what you're going to see now is an authentication prompt pop up, and obviously this supports multi-factor authentication. So if you're using that, as I am, then you may get a prompt on your phone to provide that. Okay, so there's the MFA prompt, so we'll just approve that. Okay, so that's our session created. So what we now need to do is we now need to import the command lists that will have come with that session into our current PowerShell window. And the way we do that is using the import PS session command. So we enter import PS session, and then we type the name of the variable that we just created, which in this case was session. And what you'll see there is it's importing the commands from those PowerShell modules into our current window. Okay, so now that that's done, let's take a look at the Microsoft Teams meeting policies that we've currently got. And the way that we do that is with the get CS Teams meeting policy PowerShell command. So if we type this in, we can use tab to go through all the available commands, and we can see there that's the one we want, get CS Teams meetings policy. Now, the output from that isn't particularly helpful, especially when we want to try and look at a specific setting. So what we can do is we can pipe the output from that and limit what's returned. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say that I only want to see the identity and the designated presenter role mode fields. And what we see now is we see the names of all of our different Teams meeting policies, and we also see what the current setting for those is. So in the output just here, we can see that for our global policy, the current designated presenter role mode is set to everyone user override. Now, if we refer to the blog post that we posted recently about how to do this via PowerShell, we'll see that there's 4 different modes available. And so the least restrictive, the default mode, is the mode that it's currently set to, everyone user override. So what we want to do today is we want to change this to this second option, everyone in company user override, so that means when external participants are joining our meetings, they're not automatically going to be a presenter. Okay, and so the way we do this is by using the set CS Teams meeting policy PowerShell command. So we enter the command set CS Teams meeting policy. Then we need to provide the identity. And so the identity of the policy that we want to apply this to in this case is global. Then we can add the designated presenter role mode, and then we need to just type in the value that we want to set this to. So everyone in company user override. We hit enter, and that will submit the command. Now what we can do is if we use the up arrow to return to the commands that we've previously entered, and then we rerun that previous command to return the results, we can see that in our global policy, that's now been changed to everyone in company user override. So that's a global policy, but what about if you wanted to set this to a specific set or a specific group of users? So what we can do in this case is we can create a new Teams meeting policy that you can then assign to specific users. And so the way we do this is using the new CS Teams meeting policy command. So we'll enter new CS Teams meeting policy. For the identity, we need to provide a name for the new meeting policy. So we'll call this restrict presenters. And then we can set our designated presenter role mode to everyone in company user override again. If we use the up arrow to get to our get CS Teams meeting policy command again, we'll see our new policy that we just created there, restrict presenters, is now in the list. Okay. So if we wanted to assign this new policy that we've just created to a user, then we can use the grant CS Teams meeting policy command. So what this would look like is grant-cs Teams meeting policy. Policy name is where we define the name of the policy. Now, obviously global you don't need to apply because that automatically applies to everyone, but this is if you want to do a user scoped policy. So we can do restrict presenters, which is the name of the policy that we just created. And then identity is where we provide the names of the users. So I can enter my name just here. And if we hit enter there, that would apply that policy just to me. Okay, well hopefully you've enjoyed that introduction to Microsoft Teams PowerShell, and that's given you enough so that you can get started in managing and creating some policies using some of the options that aren't available via the user interface. If you want to see more tips and intros like this, then please subscribe to the channel with the button below. And if you want to receive notifications when we post new videos, then you can also hit the bell icon to get those. If you have liked this, then please hit the like button. And if you have any questions, then please feel free to either comment below or reach out to us via Facebook or Twitter. Have a good day and happy management.